If you've heard anything about short-term rentals here in Arizona, you have likely heard about homeowners doing everything they can to try to figure out how they can ban them from their neighborhood. So how did we get here? And what, if anything, is being done to try to help with any of these issues that we're seeing? Now, if you are an owner of a short-term rental or thinking about buying a home to become a short-term rental owner, make sure you stick around so that you know what is required of you, what the most recent Arizona Supreme Court decision was about short-term rentals, and a few things that some city officials are trying to get past that if you owned a short-term rental in any of these cities, it would affect you. Now, I'm just going to say this now because I have stayed in many short-term rentals, Airbnbs, VRBOs, and things like that. And for my family, I absolutely love it. It makes traveling so much easier for us. So although I can totally understand homeowners' concerns about having these in their neighborhoods, I don't really want to see them go away completely. I do, however, think we are at a critical point with this issue because although they can be great for economic revenue and allow for more tourism, it also can be detrimental to people's property values. So how did we get here? Back in 2016, Governor Ducey signed a law that prohibited cities and municipalities from banning any short-term rentals. From the governor's perspective, this allowed travelers to, instead of just turning to hotel chains, could inject these profits into the local economy by paying the locals. Sounds good, right? So prior to this, there were no real laws governing what cities could and couldn't do. And cities like Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, Flagstaff, and Sedona that gets a huge amount of travelers and a lot of tourism really started to see problems come in with these short-term rentals. Now, when it comes to short-term rentals, many homeowners feel like this could be a detriment to their property value, especially if there are multiple short-term rentals within your community. So the other issue that always came up was affordability. With these short-term rental buyers coming into the market, they were actually taking things off the market for people that were looking for primary residences. It was driving home prices up, which again was a really hard thing for people that wanted to buy a home to live in. Around the valley, many groups were looking for ways to prohibit activities that they felt were disruptive to their neighborhoods and quality of life, such as loud noises, aka parties, crowds, and trash. So unfortunately, there have been some bad apples that have come in and rented some of these homes. They have caused problems and damage, not only to the homes, but sometimes to the neighborhoods. In 2019, a law was passed that requires owners of these short-term rentals to provide contact information just in case of a complaint, such as excessive noise, partying, and the like. It also prohibited these rentals to be used as a special event when a permit or a license was required. This is also when it was required for every short-term renter to get a transaction privilege tax license. Now, getting all of these short-term rental operators to actually register for this tax license has taken some time, but more and more are registering every day. Now, just one quick little note about that. This tax license must be with the property owner, not the property manager, which some people think. Now, to help with some of these grievances that some of the community members had about these short-term rentals, Airbnb actually instituted a temporary no-party policy back in 2020. And has since made this a permanent policy because they felt like it worked very well and really helped to tamp down some of these experiences that people were having. So because cities could not ban short-term rentals, people living within communities would go to the HOA and petition to have people sign to change the HOAs. They would change them from allowing short-term rentals to doing a 30-day minimum, and some even did a 6-month minimum. So this does drastically change where investors are actually buying homes. So for an investor, you've got to make sure that the CC&Rs allow short-term rentals. And for those people that just don't want to have those short-term rentals within your community, that's okay. We now know most CC&Rs are addressing this. I know I have buyers that are telling me for a primary residence, I don't want to live where any short-term rentals are. So HOAs really played a big part in these communities that did not want short-term rentals anymore. However, in March of 2022, the Arizona Supreme Court just had a big ruling that could change some of this. Really, the long and short of it means that if the CC&Rs were not originally written allowing for changes or amendments to the CC&Rs, if communities decided to change these CC&Rs and not allow short-term rentals, if someone owning a short-term rental within that community wants to take them to court, it could get overturned and short-term rentals could be allowed. So the big thing about this ruling is it really goes back to the original CC&R documents. How were they written? And the most recent development is the state legislature actually passing a bill which is going to allow the cities and the towns more authority to fine and penalize repeat offenders and hosts of these short-term rentals. So what do short-term vacation rental owners need to do? They need to obtain a transaction privilege sales tax license with the state of Arizona Department of Revenue. They also need to register the property as a residential rental with the Maricopa County assessor. And they need to provide your property owner information and emergency contact information to the city. Now, these rules are specific to Scottsdale, but many cities here have also adopted the same rules. Now, the big thing to note is number 3. When you're talking about a contact information, the emergency contact person, you need to know that if there's a grievance or a complaint filed on your property, the police are called, you have 1 hour to physically get to that property, day or night. And from there, that's when the fines start happening. And by the way, those fines do not go to Airbnb or VRBO. They go straight to the property owner. So because there are so many complaints with these short-term rentals, many cities have instituted a task force with their police department. Those are the people that specifically respond to these calls. They also have hotlines for other property owners to call and file complaints. Now, should these calls end up in any wrongdoing, then this is where fines start happening, and multiple offenses, you could lose your license. So now I really can see both sides of this. But just for the case of economic viability, I want to talk about what the taxes are for these short-term rentals, which is just money being injected back into the cities. Now, this is just for Scottsdale, so every city is going to be a little bit different, but this is going to be a great example. The total transaction privilege tax is 14.02% for every short-term rental. And from that, in the first 2 months of 2022, the city of Scottsdale collected $3.12 million. Now, if you're looking to become a short-term rental owner, this is something you definitely need to factor in when you're talking about all your numbers. Now, just to show you the difference, the long-term rental tax rate is 1.75%, but short-term rental profits are much greater. So what are some cities still pushing hard for? Limiting the number of short-term rentals allowed. Now, I know San Diego just did this, and it will go into effect in 2023. They're only going to allow 1% of their total housing to be short-term rentals. How are they going to decide? A lottery. So while I don't think that having an overall limit on the amount of short-term rentals that we have in our market as a whole is a bad thing, especially in the light of our most recent inventory shortage, where these investment owners were coming in and paying cash and really pushing these primary resident owners out. They just couldn't compete against cash because that's what most of them had. Bottom line is that I just don't see a lottery being fair. I just don't. So what are the cities working on so that the overall quality of life is not disrupted by any of these short-term rentals? The city of Scottsdale and many other cities have created their very high priorities. And now most of them are already being implemented, but some they're still working on. So here's what they've been working on and what's to come. They want to allow cities to apply reasonable licensing and permitting taxes on these short-term rental owners. Reestablish cities to be able to manage short-term rentals differently than long-term rentals. They want to create a mechanism that will cap the total percentage of short-term rentals and make sure that they're spaced out. They want to require platforms to provide local and state ordinances and laws to their hosts, guests, and owners, and provide documentation that they have received it. They also want to require these short-term rental operators to operate at the safety public level, basically like a hotel. I can tell you that because of these laws and some of the things that some of these short-term rental owners see coming, they have decided to put their homes on the market and actually sell and get out of this business, which is one of the reasons that we have seen an increase in our purchase inventory on the market in the last couple months. Now, if you'd like to learn more about that, take a look at this video where I dive a little bit deeper into that. If I can answer any other questions for you, please feel free to reach out. My contact information is all down below. As always, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.